every individual fragment of silicon is special.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always, our Galax and Petty fan. Let us get to the news as such as it is. Galax, why don't you start us off this week?
It's my birthday today. Happy birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really excited for the new DLC for Super Robot Wars 30.
Oh yeah, that is getting DLC in that.
It technically came out yesterday, but the actual, or they announced it yesterday and made it available to buy, and then the actual update that actually has most of the content for it comes next week. And also this weekend-ish is when the battling for the thing to get the shiny Galarian Moltres is, and I'm still pissed off that I missed the Articuno.
What is this on?
Sword and Shield.
Oh, I should probably get on that.
If you haven't signed up yet, I think it's too late.
Oh, well then.
They did it. It was 3 sequential, quote unquote, monthly, because I think they were both. The other ones were both in March, or at least the first one ended in March. For the Galarian legendary birds in their shiny forms, which are all the original palettes from their Cantonian forms. Anyway, let's see. I finally got a chance to play Kirby Forgotten Land, and it's good and fun and very cute. Need to play more of it, but I'm hoping to play with my friend mostly, since there is 2D in the game. Or 2-player. Outside of video gaming, and the fact that it's my birthday, let's see. My sister's coming up this weekend, which should be fun. I'm sure she'll want to play board games and stuff, so that will probably be fun. Work has been pretty low-key, and I am taking a long weekend this weekend due to birthday thing and the fact that it's kind of awkward to take Wednesday off if it's the only day you're taking off that week. I think that's about it.
Okay. Petty, it's your go.
Not a whole lot going on. I did end up getting Luna a birthday present. It was some cat furniture. Because her birthday is on the 18th, and I don't know how I feel about my cat going to be a teenager.
Is that actual birthday or adoption birthday? Or
Birthday.
Oh, okay. Not everybody knows that, so.
Yeah, the only really reason why I know that is because the 18th is when my sister met her dog, and it was literally when Luna's mom was having the kittens as we were there, so yeah.
I see. Well, that is a very old age for a cat, so I hope she stays healthy.
Oh yeah, she's currently chilling like, this is fun, thanks. And I also have a few more Beyblades coming because sales are cool, and I don't have a problem. You can't tell me otherwise.
Right.
And not a whole lot else is going on. I did end up getting the I think it's like the Humble Choice monthly thing this month because it had Ghost Runner in it, and it looked cool. And for like $8, sure, why not?
I picked up picked that up for 50 cents on GOG, or third-party site selling GOG keys.
Mm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it looks interesting, so maybe I'll give it a try sometime in the near future.
Okay.
And yeah, not a whole lot else going on. So I guess next victim?
Like, no, we still lack a fourth member to have another next victim.
I mean,
Like,
sure.
unless this bounces back to Golic somehow. Like,
Yes, what is your news for next week?
yes.
If I knew
Anyway.
that, it wouldn't be news.
Fair. Anyway, so my news this week, as mentioned last week, I took my mother to a local Italian restaurant. Not the local. There is more than one, but it's her favorite for her birthday. She enjoyed it a lot. Introduced her to, forget how it's pronounced, Nochi.
I think it's
gnocchi.
Nochi. Yeah, Nochi, something like that.
It's a nya.
Yeah, gnocchi. Yeah, it's like it's the potato pasta.
Ah,
Yeah, that's stuffed with ricotta cheese. Like, she said she wanted something different. I'm like, okay, this pasta isn't from wheat; it's from potatoes. It always reminds me of a pierogi, although I like pierogies more.
yeah.
Still a good pasta.
Yeah, our local Italian restaurant is the Olive Garden.
No, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an Olive Garden nearby. Never went to it once. Because, there are real Italian places to go. Like, and the good mark of a good Italian restaurant is if it has a good cannoli. Now, this place has good cannolis. Not great, not the best. That's Pizza Villa, if I'm being honest. But still good cannolis. I prefer their limoncellos. Like, let's see. In gaming news, I have completed Axiom Verge. Got nearly 100% in that game, but I'm like, okay. I was like missing like 1% of the map and 4% of the item. And like, okay, that's just pure tedium hunting down the shit I missed. Like, I don't care about 100% that much. So now I'm replaying Retro City Rampage DX. Still a great, probably underrated title these days. But that's a topic for another day. Anyway, so that's my news for the week. So merrily we shall be rolling along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Joey Zielkowski of Schell Games and Toontown Rewritten.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. Took a bit to get here. Just glad you checked your spam folder. Anyway. But yeah, that's all been sorted out. So, how we like to get started here? Like to get to know the person, the people behind the game, the studio, and whatnot. And I'll be honest, this one's going to be a bit multi-layered because the main thing we're going to be talking about here isn't necessarily representative of your day jobs or Schell Games' portfolio. That is a bit of a separate issue. But before we get into that, how did you get into video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Ooh, that is a great question. I think, I've always just kind of loved games for as long as I can remember. Oddly enough, one of the first games that I played, believe it or not, was Toontown Online, the game that we'll be talking about tonight. But I also, I loved playing PC games as a kid because it was really it was our console as a family, I guess. I didn't have a Nintendo system for a while. So I played games like one that stands out is it was a title called Speedy Bloopy. It was a weird like platforming game where you play as a little yellow egg, and there's like a bunch of different styled levels, and you can design levels yourself. And so I didn't know it at the time, obviously, but I guess that was kind of my first venture into designing games, was like building my own levels on this like weird yellow egg world building game. Was also a big fan. Some of my big influences as a kid were Spore, you know, the EA game where you're kind of like creating your own creatures and exploring the galaxy. And yeah, so that was kind of my personal venture into games. Professionally, oddly enough, also very much related to Toontown, because when Toontown shut down, I was a part of the team that helped bring it back online, because it was a game that, you know, had a big impact on me as a kid and that I really loved and gave me a lot of lifelong friends. And so I wasn't a game developer at the time. I was 15, and I had barely any experience with programming or any of the things that you need to know to bring back a game like this. But I made it work. I worked with a really talented team who taught me a lot, and just Googled away and learned what I could. And that kind of started my journey into, you know, becoming a professional game designer.
Right. We'll explore a bit more of that later. But we do have a question from the chat room, and this is a thing that we were going to have to address at some point. I suppose now is a good point to do it. The Player Zero asks, I have a burning question lit by the shutdown of Club Penguin Rewritten. Did Toontown Rewritten and Disney ever reach an agreement to not shut down TTR as long as they don't use their assets or make money off of it?
That's a great question. Very, very topical for today, because,
Yes.
you know, I guess for those listening who don't know, just earlier today, you know, fresh off the presses, Disney shut down Club Penguin Rewritten, which was a private server very similar to that of Toontown Rewritten, at least in terms of its name and everything, where, you know, they were bringing back Club Penguin and keeping it online for people to continue playing. And worth noting, Club Penguin Rewritten isn't part of Toontown Rewritten. None of our team members work on that game. They just, you know, named their game Rewritten as kind of a homage to us and other rewritten games out there. But yeah, it was super sad to hear that news, because I know there are so many people who love Club Penguin just like they love Toontown. And you know, these worlds are important. I think that's something that can get lost in the mix of it all sometimes, is that these games, they're more than just, you know, they're more than just a Mario level. They're more than just like a single player experience. They're multiplayer. They're a community. It's a whole world inhabited by people that make real relationships, friendships, learned real life skills, and like become better people, learning to work together and everything. And it's sad whenever one of those worlds closes. And, you know, unfortunately for a lot of companies, it's down to the bottom line of whether or not it's making a profit. But for the people who play them, and especially the people who grew up in like these games that were originally designed for kids, it means so much more than that. So to get to the heart of the question, Toontown Rewritten has never had any official contact with Disney. You know, we have a set of principles that we've followed to try and make sure that we're running this game in the best way that we can, with the best chances of being able to keep it online for as long as possible. One of the big things there is that Toontown Rewritten is not a game where you'll ever see an advertisement, a subscription, a microtransaction, a donate button. None of those things exist on our website, in the game, anywhere. There's no possible way that you could give us money. And people have tried. People want to give us money, but we have to say no, because you know, Toontown is the IP. It's owned by Disney, and it's not our place to make money off of that. We just want to keep it online for the purposes of allowing people to continue experiencing this game and living in this world as they have for almost 2 decades now. The game started in 2003. And yeah, so that's one of the key principles that I believe has allowed us to survive. I don't know the full details of what went on with Club Penguin Rewritten, but I know that they were running advertisements. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, that's the thing there. Apparently, Club Penguin Rewritten recently introduced paid advertisements into the game. And that's apparently what got Disney to hit all the buttons, so to speak. Because people have come. The hammer's been brought down hard on Club Penguin Rewritten. It's not just that the website got DCMA'd or anything like that. People have actually been arrested over this, apparently, because they're based out of the UK. I don't know. This is something I've seen, but I'm not too sure of. But it's like this is the thing that will get Disney or IP holders. It's gotten more ads and video ads in games recently.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
And it is hard, like being
and apparently Disney had sent notices to them previously, but they went ignored or defied. I'm like,
right.
Yeah. I'm like, that right there is the fire you play with if you cross the line into monetization of properties that aren't yours. Like, you can call it unfair or fair or whatever, but this is what will happen. And, it is unfortunate, but I have less sympathy for that than, a pure fan-based endeavor like this. That does bring me to my own question about this. How do you keep the costs down for running, an MMO? Granted, not the most fancy MMO, but it's still an MMO.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's hard, even though I don't think it's right that, Club Penguin Rewritten was running advertisements on their game. I can understand why they did, because it's not a cheap endeavor to run an MMO. For Toontown Rewritten, we spend thousands of dollars per month out of our own pocket just to allow you to, log on as you are right now and play the game with all these other people that you see around you. Every player it's a dollar sign, essentially. It's a cost. It takes money to support the servers and support the load, but it's something we want to do. It's something that we think is important to do because, like I said earlier, it's more than just a game. It is a community, and it's a place where people are really having real benefits. So for Toontown Rewritten, we pay for all of that out of pocket. It's just entirely funded by our team. It's not a requirement of being on the team. We're all volunteers, but thankfully we do have really generous people on our team and people who are set up, are financially stable to be able to help support the game and keep it online. So that's how we do it. That and a combination of, it's a nice motivating factor to keep the game optimized because we have to pay for it. So, things like, optimizing our server capacity and figuring out what are ways that we can make the game run more efficiently, that is a benefit to us because it results in lower server costs. But it is still very, very expensive to keep up.
I'd imagine, like I said, this isn't costing say Final Fantasy 14 levels, but you do have to pay for servers and such things. So it's good to hear that you are passionate enough to keep the game going. The Player Zero also asks, will you guys ever add optional shaders like the ones that were scrapped from Toontown Online to help modernize the looks of the game?
Great question. That is something that we've explored. It's, as you can see, Toontown, it was launched in 2003. It is a pretty dated game, but luckily it's aged much more smoothly, I guess, compared to, say, Pirates Online, which came out after Toontown did, but in my opinion at least, looks a whole lot worse than Toontown. Not to any fault of the artists who worked on it. But the Toontown, it has the benefit of it is a cartoon game. It's kind of like the same reason that Pixar, their first movie was Toy Story, because they knew that they couldn't do humans well in 3D animation yet. They knew it wasn't going to look right to have a human animated on screen. So
and
they
were
started
right.
with
the
toys.
parts that have humans are the parts that have humans and dog are the parts that have aged by far the worst.
Oh,
exactly. But then you look at like Buzz and Woody, and it's perfectly acceptable because they're plastic and they're toys, and the animation looks like plastic anyhow. So it's like, okay, yeah, that works. Mm-hmm. And Toontown, I think, is in a similar boat where it was a really smart move that they made this cartoon game when they did, because it's a lot more timeless, I guess, in its art style. That said, there are still some blurry textures. It's rough around the edges as games continue to advance and companies find more creative ways to make cartoon games look stylized. We're looking at that and trying to figure out if there's a way that we can apply it to Toontown as well, while still preserving any sort of like nostalgic looks that people might have. Like, in fact, when you go in battle, you'll see that there is a battle interface that looks pretty nice and pristine that we added recently back in December. It was part of a really big update we released, and part of that was refurbishing the battle UI in the game to make it still feel like the old one. It still has the nostalgic feeling, but it looks a whole lot better than it did before.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's always going to be a bit of a balancing act, because we've seen the remake game go all over the gamut here. And one thing you don't want to do is break the look of the game, which can happen if you remaster it improperly. Like, that being said, how with the UI elements here, how big do they go, so to speak? Like, if you looked at this game on a 4K screen, would it be sized to that proportion, or is it like just 1080?
Yeah, it does size up depending on your screen size. I don't know if it'll look fully pristine on a 4K screen. I don't have one to say for certain, but I know a couple people on our team do. But we try and have a balancing act as well of, we want to make sure the assets that we're shipping with the game can still support lower end PCs. Because one of the really nice things about Toontown Rewritten being a completely free game is that it appeals to low income families and people who can't afford modern day game consoles or a fancy gaming PC. This is a game that we can offer to them completely for free and have it run on even bare bones laptops. Right.
And I think that was always part of the appeal of Toontown, even back when it was, a live and paid for product. It was a thing targeted towards kids who, more likely than not, would not have had very powerful PCs. Another question from the player Zero. Will you guys implement the uncompressed textures from TTO that were released during the 2020s?
Yeah, that's something that we've kind of looked at alongside the shaders. Is for context, there was actually a big file dump that was posted of original quality textures from the game, because when the game shipped, they downscaled the textures to make them be able to run on 2003 era PCs, and so a lot of that was lost to time until the 2020s when it was released out on the internet. So yeah, we're looking at that. The difficult thing is, so it's not quite as simple as just drag and drop those textures into the game, because textures get palletized, which is a process where you could have one PNG file, one image file with multiple textures represented on it. And when you have all those different textures on it, it makes it, it allows it to take up less memory. when you're running the game on your computer, but it makes it more difficult for us to take those original quality graphics and like reverse engineer them back into the game. So something we're definitely looking at that we hope to do, but not something that's like coming real soon or anything.
Yeah, that sounds like it's going to take some time and effort.
Yes.
My next question would be, how many people are working on this game, both in terms of development, and I'd imagine that there has to be a fairly sizable moderation team as well.
Oh, for sure. That's another point to the things that we do to make sure that Toontown is like reaching the standards that Disney had set for it, and to help make sure it doesn't have the same fate as Club Penguin, is having a sizable moderation team. You know, at the end of the day, this is still a game that's targeted for kids, even though it's something that, you know, even adults can enjoy. And so we have a 24/7 moderation team that is constantly checking the game's chat, monitoring reports, approving names, all that good stuff to make sure that it's keeping the family-friendly nature. So in total, I think there's about 75, maybe almost 80 people who are on the team, and that's including our moderation team, our development team, our player support team, and everyone else. You know, it takes a village really to put this effort on. But yeah, I'd say around 80 people overall. Development team size is probably half than that. So maybe 40-ish people, 35 maybe on our development team.
We have a chat from Little Tooncat for Petty Fan. Hey, there's a Mingler invasion on the district you're in, which is a high-level cog for a new toon like yourself. Try switching to a non-invasion district.
Yes, I was about to mention that because I saw you had the unfortunate fate of going sad. If you go to your sticker book, as we call it, which is the green book in the bottom right, and then click on the page that has the globe icon, you'll be able to go to a different district that doesn't have a cog invasion in it.
That does beg a question from me. How friendly is Toontown Rewritten to new players, both in terms of like tutorialization and in terms of the community?
So in terms of the community, I would say that the Toontown community is, you know, I'm biased, but I think it's one of the best that you can find on the internet. It is such a wholesome place. People are so friendly. You know, like any gaming community, you'll have your fair share of bad apples, but it's definitely not super prevalent in the Toontown Rewritten community. So there are tons of people who would love to help you out as a new player. You know, people you'll just run into in the game who will offer to help every once in a while. In terms of tutorialization, that is something that I really want to improve sometime soon, because I think it is one of the areas that Toontown has fallen behind in compared to what people expect in games nowadays. You know, it used to sort of be that a lot of games would rely on you looking at like player's guides or like the manual that comes in the disc and stuff like that to learn how to play the game, like to look up all the keyboard shortcuts and the strategies and stuff like that. It's not so much the case anymore. I mean, to an extent, you know, there's still walkthrough guides out there and stuff like that, but most of that has been put into game tutorials and just like, you know, trying to put as much of that into the player's face as possible. And so I think that's an area Toontown could improve in that I would love to work on some updates for, because you know, even watching you play right now, I'm cringing like, oh no, he spawned in a Mingler invasion district, which is a level 7 cog, which is way higher level of a cog that you should be fighting right now. So just unfortunate circumstances that it spawned you in there, and that's the kind of thing that I would like to do some updates to make sure that doesn't happen to new players.
Yeah, that's good to hear. We have another question from the chat. Skip22 asks, are there eventual plans to add more species to Toontown Rewritten, or is the current amount that limits?
I wouldn't call the current amount a limit at all. No, we don't have plans currently to do it. We added 2 new species to the game. Shoot, I want to say it was 2017 or 2018. The years flow together now because I've been doing this for a long time. But we added deer and crocodile to the game, which were our 2 new species that weren't originally in Toontown Online. And I would love to add more. It takes a lot of work to create new characters like that. There's a lot of different considerations that need to go into it. But I'm all in on, I think we need cow species in Toontown. There's no reason that I shouldn't be able to play as a cow and just moo around town.
And let me see here. What are your plans on content directly after the Cellbot Field Office expansion?
That's a really great question. So in December, for those who don't know, we released the what we called the Cellbot Task Force update. And so Cellbot Task Force was a big update we'd been working on for almost 4 years, which added a new area to the game, a bunch of new Toon tasks to go with it. It was essentially like an extension of the end game of Toontown. A new boss battle, complete with like a new cog facility to go through and reach that boss battle, among other little things, which was really great to see. And it was what we had been working for several years, like I said, and building up to. And now the big question is, what comes next? So we spent the first quarter of 2022, like up until March, exploring basically every option. Like we had a big gathering as a team in a project that we called Looking Glass. And the Looking Glass project was essentially, what are all of the things that we could do? And based off of that, what do we want to do? And what does the community want us to do? And what would be best for, the longevity of Toontown? And so we do have the answer to that. We know what we're going to be working on next. We're not ready to talk about it because we don't want to say anything too early, because a lot of things can change between now and whenever the thing releases. But we have a couple tricks up our sleeve. It's not going to be just one big project this time. We've got a couple small projects that we're, in addition to a big project, that we're going to be working on essentially over like the next 2 years or so. So we'll see how things go. And you'll definitely be hearing from us as soon as we have stuff that we want to talk about there. But I can tell you it's going to be really exciting. We got some exciting plans in store.
Apologies about the name misspelling there. It should be Schell Games, Petty, not Schnell Games.
Ah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, no worries.
I can fix that later.
Yeah. Though I don't think the time that we've already recorded, that's kind of just there for all eternity. Anyway, the Player Zero.
Worries.
Right. It's happened before. It'll probably happen again. All right. The Player Zero asks, is Doodle Revamps on the list?
It might be. I'm not going to say no, but I'm not going to say yes either. But we know that there's a big community demand for doing something with doodles, which are the Toontown pets. I would love to do some work with doodles, but all of these projects, they're the big thing that we wanted to do with that Looking Glass project is like there are so many directions we could take Toontown. There's doodles that could use some revamps. There's a new playground that could be created. What's under the cloud on the map is something that Toontown players talk about a lot. There is the executive office tower. There's answering the question like what happened to Slappy, which was a early point of Toontown Rewritten's story. And so all of those things were discussed. Every possible thing that you could think of that we could add to Toontown was pretty much talked about as part of this project. And like I said, I can't tell you what the things that we selected are yet, but I think that people will be really excited when they all pan out. But we're only in the early stages of actually beginning to develop that content now.
Petty, sorry to correct you again, but it's Schell, not
There we go.
yeah. Like, it's a bit tricky. Like,
Yes, it is not the easiest name to spell.
it. I mean, it can be course corrected. There we go. Anyway, so that leads me a question on my end. That is, how do you go about creating brand new content for Toontown, both in terms of actual development, but in terms of conceptualization?
Yeah, it's. I guess the answer to that is it's changing a lot, because the way that we went about developing the Cellbot task force is a lot different than how we're now going about developing the next things. Because we learned a lot over the course of those years of development about best practices, ways that we can make sure that our next set of content isn't going to take 4 years to develop and everything. I guess the process that we're going through right now is we're in a pre-production phase where we're thinking about a lot of different concepts of what our next content could be. And we may have focused in to say like we're going to do X or Y, but we still have to figure out what does that actually look like? What are all the things that we need to check off to be able to complete this content, and what do we want it to be, I guess. So there's a lot of early exploration ideas being thrown around. From there, we'll move into a production phase where we start building out prototypes and seeing what's fun, of the things that we talked about and that we were exploring, which of those things are actually fun. Because a lot of times you'll see in game development that something that sounds fun on paper, you implement it and then it's not actually fun in game. So we'll be doing playtests. We'll be doing a lot of examination of Toontown Online content. That's a big focus of us when we are creating something new, is making sure that it feels natural in Toontown, that it like fully lives up to everything that Toontown Online was, and that we aren't inadvertently like undoing some of the things that made that game great, or like adding something that doesn't feel like it naturally fits in with the original game. So those are all things that we consider when developing new content.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple of questions about this from the chat. They're wondering what's going on with the partner program. Let's see. Will it include more mature audiences? Any other updates in regards to? I'm not exactly sure how the partner program works personally, but what's going on there?
Yeah, the Toontown Partner Program is something we added in the last couple of years, and it's a way to promote content creators who create Toontown stuff, especially like those who have like smaller channels or streams or communities. It's a way for us to promote them and help them reach larger audiences. We'll do things like posting on the Toontown blog to highlight people, or advertising events in game by sending out like a whisper to everyone in the game to let them know about events. So in terms of more mature audiences for the partner program, it's probably not something that you'll ever see with Toontown Rewritten, unfortunately. And I know that there is a great like mature community of Toontown content creators, but it's part of it is the risk factor for us. Like, we want to make sure that we are preserving the legacy of this game and making sure we're continuing to promote the family-friendly values that it was founded on. Partially because that feels like what we think is the right thing to do, with this still being a game that brings in a lot of children who play it. And also partially because we think it's what we have to do in order to stay online and prevent us from getting the same fate as Club Penguin Rewritten. So we don't actively promote or accept mature content creators into our program. However, that doesn't mean that we don't enjoy having you guys around, because any Toontown content is good Toontown content in my eyes, and I love anything that'll keep the community alive. And there is an audience for the more mature streamers, but unfortunately, it's just not something that we can support on our end.
Not surprised there, given the eternal focus of Toontown here. Anyway, before I go to some more chat questions, another question I have is in regards to, we've talked about updates to the shaders and various graphical, but I want to know what's going on at a deeper level, like the engine here. Is this running on 2003 engine technology, or are we seeing something that's running in, say, Unity?
Oh yeah, great question. So it's not running in Unity. I sort of wish Toontown was running in Unity some days, but it is running in an engine called Panda 3D, which is an engine that Disney developed actually for their theme park technologies. The studio who originally created Toontown, they were called Disney's VR Studio. And they started in the Imagineering division of Disney. And so they were working on stuff like Disney Quest, which was a Disney theme park attraction where they had a lot of kind of cutting edge technologies.
Been there when it was a thing.
Yeah. So the group that created Toontown, they worked on Disney Quest and other more virtual Disney theme park attractions back in the 90s. And then they shifted their focus to see if they could use that same engine to create what they called an online theme park, which is Toontown. And it worked. They used their engine. They managed to pull it off for 2003. It was a really great game engine. Over the years, it has fallen behind a lot when it comes to, in comparison to Unreal Engine and Unity and the other great engines out there. Panda 3D, I'm not going to totally discount it though, because there are times that at work, I work a lot in both Unity and Unreal Engine at Schell Games. And then when working on Toontown, I'm working in Panda 3D. There are times when I'm working in Unity or Unreal Engine that I'm like, oh man, if only this was Panda 3D. I know exactly how to do this in Panda 3D, but I can't figure out how to do it in Unity. However, there are probably more occasions when I'm working in Panda 3D that I'm like, I wish this was a Unity, because I know exactly how to do this in Unity and it would be so much easier. But yeah, so it's not the 2003 version of Panda 3D. Panda 3D is open sourced, and so there's a community of people even outside of Toontown who use Panda 3D for their games and keep the engine updated and keep some new content and fixes rolling out for that engine. So it is like a modern day version of Panda 3D, but certainly not quite as spiffy as you'd see in the really high end game engines.
Yeah, and how much of it? How do you keep that updated, so to speak? Because it is almost 20-year-old technology.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, there are other people out there who are helping to maintain Panda 3D. We contribute to it as well, but there's people specifically designated to maintain the engine outside of Toontown. And so we're able to benefit from that, and we're able to, they're able to benefit from us as well. But it's a community effort, really. It takes, like I said, it takes a village to make the game run in the way that it does.
Okay. Is Toontown Rewritten ever going to be on mobile or in VR?
Ooh, I wish it could be.
Oh my god.
We did a VR test in 2016. We do an annual event, or we used to do an annual event called Toonfest, which we only stopped due to COVID-19. It was an in-person meetup, and hundreds of Toontown players from around the world would come and celebrate with us and just kind of get to know each other in the real world. And it was a lot of fun, and I'm really hopeful that we may be able to do it again. Hopefully, if the world keeps healing then 2023 might be a year that we can do ToonFest again. But anyhow, that's a tangent. The main thing is that at ToonFest 2016, we did a VR demo. We had some of our engineers, mainly one named Hawkart, created just a really basic demo of like, what if Toontown was a VR game built in Unreal Engine? It was didn't have anywhere near the number of features that Toontown Rewritten has, but you could at least walk around in the game and like actually be in the world of Toontown. And I think it was really compelling and cool. And I would love to see that happen in a more official way. I don't think we could ever take Toontown Rewritten directly and put it in VR, because VR games are designed very differently a lot of times than PC games.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there could totally be a Toontown VR game, and I would love to build that one day. In terms of mobile, I think Toontown Rewritten as it is could totally be on mobile, but there are different things to consider. There is the whole technology bit of it, where Panda 3D isn't the easiest game engine to get on a mobile device. And then there's also the interface aspect of it. Like it's not just a matter of getting the game running on a mobile device, but now we also have to make sure that there's variants of the interface because Toontown is designed for a mouse and keyboard, and it doesn't quite work in that same way on a mobile device where you're using your thumbs to move around and communicate and whatever else you need to do.
All right. Some other questions here. Are any plans on a reworked True Friend system? Nina Tanosa wants to be able to be chatless, but be able to talk to their friend.
I definitely vibe with you on that. I love the speed chat feature in Toontown, and I wish that more people used it. So there's not specific plans to do that, but just know that I'm on your side, and I would love to do something with it.
And Skip22 asks, have there ever been plans to expand upon the estates?
There have been plans talked about for it, yeah. I am a big fan of an estate overhaul feature. I'd love to see, so like right now we're looking at the catalog with Clarabelle Cow there. And I would love to revamp the catalog. I think that there's a lot more we could do with customization in Toontown through estates. I'd love to be able to like expand your house and add new rooms. It just comes down to time and energy, I guess, because there's so many amazing ideas of things that we could do for Toontown. And that's ultimately, going back to the Looking Glass project that I talked about. That's what that project was all about, was we knew there's a ton of things we could do. There's a ton of good ideas, no shortage of it. But what's actually going to be the absolute best thing that we could dedicate our team's time toward? Because, we don't have unlimited resources or unlimited time to be able to do it. And yeah, I'm hopeful that the things that we've picked out are going to make people happy.
I think this will be the last question we'll ask in this session because we are running low on time ourselves. But Bad Side FX asks, will the partner program in general be opened up soon?
Yeah, there's no estimate right now on when the partner program will be opened up again, but we know that there's a big demand for it, and we definitely want to get it opened up as soon as possible. So I would say keep an eye out on our social media and the blog, because as soon as it's open again, we will be letting you know about that.
All right. Well, Joey, it's been a wonderful conversation so far. And we are running low on time here, but I do want to invite you back to the program. First slot we have open is June 15th. I know that's a bit of a distance, but we are quite booked up.
Yeah.
So if you wish, we could have you back then and have you answer more questions about Toontown. And indeed, we haven't even gotten into your work at Schell Games yet.
Yeah, I would love to talk more about Toontown and Schell Games too. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on at Schell Games. So yeah, I'd love to be back and talk more about that.
Great, I'll put you down there. And before I shut down things here, I want to see if my colleagues here have any questions that they didn't get to answer.
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think I piped in when I thought of something.
All right. So yeah, be sure to tune in for part 2 of this, basically, on June 15th. And indeed, if you enjoyed this interview and wish to hear more of our other stuff, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when to go online. But until then, Joey, I want to thank you for being on the program and taking time out to be here. In the meantime, for those who haven't engaged in Toontown Rewritten, you can do so right now at it's got its own dedicated website. I don't think this is on Steam or anything like that currently.
That's right. Yeah, it's toontownrewritten.com is the one and only place to play it.
Okay. So if you wish to get into the game, you can do so at no cost. And yeah, Petty, play us to the next segment. Welcome to the topic of discussion. For those who might be new here, this is where we talk about video game stuff that's not related to the guest interview. And this week we are talking about the mysterious, or maybe more long-winded, case of the disappearing Miss Pac-Man. So, in case you are unfamiliar with this particular bit of news, it came out a few days ago that in the upcoming Bandai Namco release of pretty much all the Pac-Man games, or at least the Maze games, the Pac-Man Museum Plus, I believe they're calling it, they are changing not just the Miss Pac-Man sprite, but they are quote-unquote creating a new character, very big air quotes here, and they are introducing to the world Pac-Mom. And you might be thinking to yourself, this is a very strange thing to be doing, especially in regards to old games. The specific game is Pac-Land, and it is a very strange thing. And there is indeed a reason behind it. It is a very long-running reason, as it turns out. And believe it or not, this is not the first time that Miss Pac-Man has been replaced. So I suppose for a bit of context, we need to talk about the original Miss Pac-Man game and Miss Pac-Man herself. Because, Miss Pac-Man is usually regarded as the better sequel to Pac-Man that was released in 1983. Yeah, it was 1983. Long time ago. But these assertions are wrong. And that is because Miss Pac-Man is not a sequel. Miss Pac-Man is a mod. It is a hack of Pac-Man. And those origins are at the base of this long-running dispute that's been hot and cold. But, the condensed version of Miss Pac-Man is this company, the General Computer Corporation, got their start by doing an arcade mod of Missile Command, which had its own legal problems, which are independent of this. But that did a decent amount of business, and Pac-Man was a huge smash sensation in the arcades in 1980, 1981, all that. And the American distributor Midway wanted more Pac-Man. The thing is, at the time, Namco, the original creator of the games, they were having problems releasing what is the true sequel to Pac-Man, the relatively obscure Super Pac-Man. Decent game in its own right, but I can definitely see why Miss Pac-Man ended up being the more preferred game, not just in terms of like character, but in terms of design. But that's a tangent. Anyway, so these guys were working on a maze game called Crazy Otto. Had nothing to do with Pac-Man. In fact, Crazy Otto looked very, very different than anything Pac. But Midway got wind of this thing, and they basically contracted the General Computer Corporation to do an authorized, unauthorized hack. That is to say, Midway greenlit it, Namco did not. And if you're starting to see the problem, yeah. And because this was a contracted work, there's a royalty agreement in place that Midway signed back in the day and is still going to this day. And that's at the root of the battle for Miss Pac-Man, if you will. Because this is not the only hack that GCC would do in terms of Pac-Man. They also did Junior Pac-Man, which was far less successful. But, Miss Pac-Man ended up being as if not more popular than Miss Pac-Man. In fact, I think Miss Pac-Man is the best-selling arcade game of all time. So, yeah, did a lot of business here. It upset Namco to no end, to the point where they kicked Midway out of distributing Pac-Man and took it over to themselves. But they inherited that royalty agreement with GCC, and they were not too happy about it. Once again, condensing a lot of legal history down here, but they went to arbitration over it twice. One in the mid-'80s, where the end result was, if it's a coin-operated machine, they get paid. If it isn't, they don't. And any home version, GCC gets paid. And that got settled for a couple of decades until like the mid-'90s, early 2000s, when Miss Pac-Man games, the character was all over the place in Pac material. And when the GCC got wind of this, finally, apparently they saw a Miss Pac-Man and Galaga machine at like a New Jersey rest stop. They went to arbitration again. And, well, Namco, it's like Namco owed them money. And that's what it comes down to here. That's why we've seen the erasure of Miss Pac-Man. That's why we've seen the Miss Pac-Man game regulated to paid for DLC when it does get released, because Bandai Namco has to pay for that. And it gets more complicated because a few years back, the GCC decided to sell this arrangement. You can do that to At Games. And if you don't know who At Games are, well, I kind of envy you. But they are I hesitate to use the word arcade manufacturer, because they do that, but they also, they used to produce like all of the Sega aftermarket materials, like a lot of the, not the Genesis Mini, like a lot of Genesis material from about, say, 10 years ago to about 6 years ago. They put out, and you ever bought one of these things, you know it because it was so bad. Like, to the point where Sega kicked them off the Genesis Mini.
Oh boy.
And I'm not exactly sure why GCC sold this thing to At Games, but that's just exacerbated the problems. As Bandai Namco tried to sue At Games because of copyright infringements and all this stuff, and this lawsuit was dismissed. But royalty repayments are still there, so Miss Pac-Man's basically been locked into the vault. And in order to get around that, it's like we're not exactly sure if likeness rights are involved in this. I wouldn't be surprised if they are, or if there's a portion of the royalties to having Miss Pac-Man appear in a game. We don't know the particulars of that. It's the question of, is it legal ramifications that's keeping Miss Pac-Man out of games now, or is it just Bandai Namco being somewhat understandably petty about things? We don't know the question to that, and I suppose it doesn't really matter in terms of the answer, because the result is still the same. We get things like Pac-Mom, and a character you've probably never heard of, but nonetheless exists, Pac-Marie, who is basically, what if Miss Pac-Man, but spunky teenager? And the reason you haven't heard of her is because she was introduced in the Pac-Man cafe in Tokyo. Kind of their mascot. They excused her existence by they wanted someone who skewed younger or whatever. I don't think anyone really bought it if they noticed. But I get that's because Pac-Land has the Pac family there, and Pac-Marie wouldn't really fit into that situation for obvious reasons. They needed to create Pac-Mom, which has gotten people upset for a few reasons. Not just in terms of, the erasure of the original Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, but it's because now this character is being defined by motherhood, which is, raising a whole bunch of feminist issues, let's say, and leave it there. When, no, this character just exists because, she's legally distinct, probably. Or,
There are 3 genders now: man, mom, and baby.
Yes.
Or junior, whatever the crap the kid is called now.
Yeah. So, the point is, Miss Pac-Man's basically in legal limbo unless Bandai Namco and now At Games feel like playing ball with each other. And that doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon because, like I said, they're kind of forced partners because, the GCC basically wanted to get out of not the video game business. They haven't actually been developing video games for many decades. They stopped doing that in the mid-'80s, and they moved over to laser printer. But they decided they wanted to dissolve the company in 2015, and that's when they sold their assets royalty agreement to At Games. And like I said, it didn't make the situation better. And because I do lament the fact that Miss Pac-Man has to basically go away because of stupid legal reason. Now, it's no good reason, I can tell you that, at this point. And, I can't say if there will ever be a solution, but hopefully one can be meted out because, not gonna lie, Pac-Mom is fairly lame. Just on the cusp of it. Because, you look at the redrawn sprite and it's this is probably 20% distinct. Anyway, any other comments towards Miss Pac-Man here? I guess not. So, that will indeed do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Once again, if you enjoyed the program tonight, be sure to hit the subscribe button, notification bell. And if you missed this episode, it will be up on YouTube probably in a couple of days. It all depends on when Petty cuts it. Anyway, so the week ahead. I know we did mention a Friday show on Sunday, the Sunday reviews, but that has been moved to next week at the behest of the guest. The reason being is that delay was asked for was so they could get more guests. So more on that on Sunday. And coming up on the Sunday reviews, we will be having reviews of After Death, Julie's Sweets for the Nintendo Switch, ABC no, sorry. That's next. That's the week after. Too many windows, too many things. This week's reviews are Symphony, the new platform game from Anaglesiak Productions of Anodyne fame, Elex 2 for the PlayStation 4, a big-ass German RPG from Piranha Bytes, Emily Archer and the Curse of Tutankhamun, another Oceans Media, let's say, I don't know, point-and-click adventure.
One of those things they do where clearly the main point is the narrative, but then there's some game elements.
Yeah, I'm like, because these things actually do change quite a bit from title to title. And Necrosphere Deluxe, a combination Metroidvania and what I like to call a masochist platformer. Think something like Super Meat Boy, Dust Force, 1001 Spikes, anything, a platform game where you die a lot and the flow is very fast. Yeah, somebody had the idea to combine these two elements. I can't say it was peanut butter and chocolate, but more on that on Sunday. And also worth mentioning that we will be having our second program of the evening in about a half an hour. Moonhawk Studios Presents over on Mac's channel. If someone wants to post the link to that in our Twitch page. Extra special mention to the fact that we'll be having Charles Wolf of Charles Wolf Music there, who was a recent guest on this program about last month. We'll be talking about the more general entertainment aspects of his career. I'm pretty sure some video game stuff will be there because, like, I saw one of the games he was working on had an update, for example. So that's the schedule for, the next few days. And until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.